Live from our studio in Babson Park, Massachusetts, it's the Fredopieshow, where we unpack history to positively impact the future. I am Fredopie, your host. Thanks for joining us live or listening to the podcast. A native of Victoria, British Columbia, Syracuse alum and Hall of Famer Tom Marechek is one of the greatest finishers of all time and was a human highlight film. Marechek is the fifth leading college goal scorer in lacrosse history with 182 goals. He's a four-time All-American. He played professional indoor and outdoor lacrosse and on several Canadian national teams. We unpack his lacrosse journey today on the Fredopieshow. Tom, welcome to the show. We are delighted to have you.
Thank you, Fred.
Tell me about your mom and dad, who I've never met. Tell me a little bit about them.
They were raising 6 kids. I have 3 sisters and 2 brothers. You know, they weren't really big athletes. My mom, obviously, she's one of 14 kids in her family.
Wow.
She grew up on a farm in Ontario, Canada. My dad went to Waterloo College and met one of her 9 brothers. Brother Fred brought my dad home for dinner, and that's pretty much how it started, where my father and my mom met in the house with 14 kids on the farm. My dad, track and field is what he did as a kid. He was actually born in Singapore, in China.
Wow.
And moved to Shanghai. His father was working for the government, and my grandfather, actually, his father, was a professional violinist. From China, he went to the States, and he went to L.A. High School, Angeles High School, and that's where I saw pictures of him running track.
Your siblings, where are you in the pecking order of your siblings? You said you have 6? There were 6 of you?
Yeah, there's 6. There's three girls, 3 boys, like the Brady Bunch. I guess I'm Bobby. I'm the spoiled little baby in the family. So my dad actually keeps joking about that I was the gin and tonic baby, kind of the mistake. The next closest sibling is Dale Ann, my sister, who's 8 years older than me. Great growing up with those siblings. A lot of fun, a lot of memories.
Any of the siblings, athletes, play sports at a very competitive level?
My brothers both played hockey and lacrosse growing up. My oldest brother, Billy, played on Team Canada a few times back in 82, in 90, and 94. He was the reason I obviously started lacrosse. You know, he came back from work one day when I was a little boy of, 6 or 7. I was ready to sign up for baseball, and he pretty much took my glove and threw it over the 9-foot fence we had in the backyard. And, to his credit, he waited for me after school and gave me this big wooden lacrosse stick, and he taught me the game of lacrosse growing up.
Give me a virtual tour of where you grew up.
Fred, I grew up on probably one of the most beautiful islands in the world. I never really appreciated it until I went to Syracuse. So basically what you're seeing mountains with snow caps and bald eagles circling around, and oceans and Pacific Oceans right there, and a lot of islands and outdoor boxes. So we played a lot of outdoor lacrosse in boxes that were outdoors. So that's where we started. My first game, I remember back in the day, I think it was like 76, was outside in a box. It was this place called Centennial Park, and it was really cool. It was a night game during the week. We'd rush home from school and have a quick early dinner, and you get your pads on, all your box gear, your wooden sticks, and you get out there and you play a 6:00 game at night on a Wednesday night, and that's what he did as a Canadian kid. You play box lacrosse outdoors. Then when you get older, you play in the arenas on weekends. The thing with Victoria, when we did get to that all-star level, when we were peewee ages of 11, you had to travel back and forth on a ferry. So we had to go to play Vancouver teams, which the ferry ride was an hour and 40 minutes. But it was exciting as a kid because the ferry had an arcade on it. It had a restaurant. Your whole team's there, and it was a great upbringing as a kid. And there's a lot of memories there. And, you play to win. That's all you knew is you wanted to win, and if you didn't win, you thought about it, and you were very hurt that you didn't win. So as a kid, Victoria was it. Victoria was just a beautiful place, and I was very lucky and fortunate enough to grow up there and play and start my career. obviously the Minto Cup Junior A trophy. It's one of the biggest amateur trophies in all sports, and that was formed in 1901. So that cup is an old trophy, which, fortunate enough, we won finally in 1988. So I've always known the Victoria Shamrocks, which is still their biggest team on the island. That's a Senior A team, and they have a lot of history there, a lot of Man Cups won, and that's what I did as a kid. That's how I learned. Everybody had role models and idols, and as a kid, eating popcorn or a hot dog in the stands, I went to a Shamrock game on a Wednesday night. It was the most exciting thing you did as a lacrosse player.
When I think about the island that you described, is it as big as the Maryland shore, the size of Delaware? How big is British Columbia?
I think it's almost 400 miles.
Wow.
From end to end, and I think the widest point is 110 miles. It's big. The majority of people obviously live on the southern tip, where Victoria is, and Sydney. That's the more city life of the island.
Were there other sports in high school that you played besides box lacrosse?
I was born in Kitchener, Ontario, on the East Coast. Then we moved to Ottawa on the East Coast. That is where hockey is obviously very popular, because you can go outside in the winter and skate on the ponds, skate on those box lacrosse rinks. I would have probably played hockey, but at an early age of, I think I was almost turning 6, is when we moved out west. My dad got a new job in the government and had to get transferred. So that's what happened. We packed up everything from Ottawa, and we moved all the way across the country to Victoria. So I did not play hockey there. My dad was not going to take me to a 4:30 a.m. hockey practice in the morning before school. I chose soccer, so I ended up playing soccer in the fall, winter, and lacrosse obviously in the spring, summer. So I never did grow up playing hockey like my brothers did. My brothers were a little older in Ontario still, so they played hockey all the way up until we moved out west.
Now, isn't Steve Nash from that region of Canada, same region as you?
Steve Nash is a great guy. Yes, he is. It's a funny story with Steve. I met him back in 1997 when I went back to play in the Man Cup for the Victoria Shamrocks. And Steve and I actually hung out a couple times together and played golf one day. This is when he was playing for the Phoenix Sun. And I remember, he wasn't making the big money yet. He bought his mom a house, and he had this big pickup truck. It was funny looking. We had a great time together.
Do you know if he played box growing up as well?
He played a little lacrosse for Saanich. That's one of the organizations that still exists today. There's Saanich, there's Esquimalt, there's Peninsula, and Juan de Fuca. These are all the little areas that still exist for youth lacrosse. So yeah, he played for Saanich as a kid. He was a big soccer player, and basketball wasn't even big when he was a kid. He just took it upon himself to play it in high school, and he got better and better.
Tom, tell us a story. How did you end up at Syracuse?
These two guys that kind of look alike.
Are they from the same town as you, or just the same region?
They're from the same town. Yeah, 8 miles. They lived in West Saanich, and I lived closer to the city of Victoria in Gordon Head, which is a suburb. I looked up to them as a kid.
What was field lacrosse like when you all were growing up?
It wasn't predominant. There was no league. We had to form a team. We called it Victoria Sea Spray, realtor group. We got sponsorship. We had to sell topsoil. We had to work bingo parlors to make money just for transportation costs. So we just formed this team when I think I was 13 and the Gates were 14. So that was the first time we really started playing field lacrosse. We'd go on the ferry like we did as kids, playing box, and play against Vancouver, kind of a club team, kind of an all-star club team they made up. We didn't have any field lacrosse in schools, in high schools, like they do everywhere here in the States. That's how it started. The men's Sea Spray team started with my brother, Kevin Alexander, Chris Hall. They started the Victoria Sea Spray men's team, and it was the same thing. They had to go to Vancouver to play, New Westminster or Coquitlam, who had to form their own all-star field lacrosse teams.
But were Paul and Gary the first Canadians from your region to go play in the U.S.?
Gary Gate was number 10 all his life. Later on in his junior A years, to number 22. kind of a sad story, Fred. There was a young man by the name of John Crowther. He was the Mann Cup MVP in 1983. So he wins the Mann Cup in 83 in Victoria. Tommy Hayes called him up and said, listen, we'd love to have you here. And the following semester, he went to Rutgers. He was the first Victoria native to play Division I lacrosse. So John Crowley was the first one to get a full scholarship to play Division I lacrosse. He's from Victoria. He was actually my PE teacher. John just finished the year at Rutgers, came back for Christmas break. Basically, it was a love triangle. Girlfriend and her ex-husband came in a rage and shot them both.
That's how 22 came. Man, that's powerful. John was a legend in your area as one of the first to go off and play.
He was a legend. Greatest guy. I remember him, just funny, witty, good-looking. He was just one of those guys that everybody loved. He was nice. He treated everybody fairly.
The show will be right back. For related content on negotiating the world of school and sports, visit our website at Fredopie.com. Check out our podcast archive and review the show on SoundCloud, Stitcher, and iTunes. You can purchase a copy of my autobiography/career advice, Start With Your Gift, on Amazon.com. We are the sum total of the people we spend time with and the books we read. Be a difference maker right now. Purchase 2 or more paperback copies of Start With Your Gift. Give them away and make a positive impact on someone's life. The book is available in digital form as an ebook and audiobook. Welcome back to this edition of the Fredopieshow Show. Paul and Gary, they go off to Syracuse, and they dropped the tip to Coach Simi about you, or tell me how that happened.
They did. So 1988, we had a great team. We always had the best team on paper. The Gates, the Peppers, myself, Robbie Dillon. You know, there's so many more really good players that could have played Division I. Nobody really recruited then. I was actually the top scorer on our team, believe it or not, even over the Gates. They came back after they won in 88, the whole air gate and everything, and they said, listen, you know, we have another guy back home that can score like we can and can do a lot of things. And he just basically, they gave Roy Simmons and Desco a tip. They barely even watched me play. You know, they watched me a little bit, I think, the year before in St. Catharines on the East Coast. And they really didn't see me play, so, you know, they took a chance. Simi took a chance on me, and thank God it panned out.
What was the transition like? I'm assuming you came right out of high school, or did you have a year off?
I did the typical Canadian thing. I had almost 2 years off. So after high school, I was a roofer. I was working on the roof, trying to make ends meet. I was still living at home. Just that's all I did. I played soccer. I actually played semi-pro soccer and lacrosse. I talked to Simmons once, and they were trying to find scholarship money for me. They talked and talked, you know, and I gave up. I haven't spoken to Simmons in probably 9 months. And here's the great story behind this. In January, I'm actually ready to go out and sign up for a community college, which is 2 miles from my parents' house. January 4th, I remember it like it was yesterday. 1989, January 4th, I was going out in my old beat-up car, reversing out of the driveway, and all of a sudden I see my mom banging on the windows. I was actually going out to buy books, start college the next day, and it's like, Tommy, come in. I was thinking, oh, what does she want? She wants me to go stop at the store to buy, you know, bread and milk and butter, and then I'm like, oh. So I pull back up, I go upstairs, and there she was. She goes, Simmons is on the phone. And I'm like, what? Coach Simmons is on the phone. So I just stalled. I was in shock because here I was thinking, no way I'm going. You know, I haven't talked to him for 9 months. As soon as I picked the phone up, he goes, Tommy? I'm like, yes, Coach. He goes, Coach Simmons here. How would you like to come to Syracuse in a week? Yeah, that would be great. He goes, we can't pay for your airfare. Can you guys handle that? But we need you here in a week because school starts. That is the God's honest truth, how this whole started. It just was boom, just like that. Wow. I remember like running out like it was yesterday out of the house, all excited. I didn't have to go buy those books at the community college. Next week I'm on a flight and never came back from then.
Wow. So you get there, you hadn't been in school for 2 years. It had to be a transition. And then how did you decide what you were going to major? How did you adapt? In box, you weren't practicing every day, were you?
No. We practiced 2 to 3 nights a week, and we played, 1 or 2 games a week, but about 1 game a week. So probably you're looking 4 out of 7 days, not every day. It took a lot, Fred. I'll be honest. It took a lot to adapt, and I'll tell you another funny story here. I'm not used to the cold. We have moderate winters. We have the Chinese currents that come through. We really don't get that much precipitation. It's beautiful. Winter can get down 30s, 20s, but it doesn't get as cold. It doesn't get Syracuse cold, and we don't get the snow that Baltimore gets. It's an island. You have, warm currents that come through in the winters. That's what Victoria, Vancouver Island's all about. So I get to Syracuse, and I remember this. I remember Gary and I fly into Toronto. Nicole Kate, Gary's wife now, was living in Toronto. She was a flight attendant, and Gary was staying with her over winter break. So Gary told me just to fly into Toronto, and we'll drive together to Syracuse, which is, it's normally a 4-hour drive from Toronto to Syracuse. We drove, and it was just a blizzard outside. Instead of 4 hours, it took 6.5, 7 hours. We get to Syracuse, and I see these huge 8-foot snow banks all over the city.
I remember.
The big old dirty snow banks that the plow would just plow over.
Look like houses.
Yes. And I'm sitting there going, oh, my God, what is this all about? I've never seen snow like this. And so I met a few of my teammates, and they're like, you're used to this, eh? You're used to this, eh? And I'm like, hey. I said, no, I'm not. They're like, come on, you're from Canada. I'm like, I'll be honest with you, fellas, it doesn't snow like it does here. And we started practicing at Coinfield, and it was cold. You saw those snowbanks on the side of the turf. And the first couple days, you don't even touch a stick. Roy Simmons there. He's like, everybody throw their sticks in the middle of the center field, and everybody's there. And then we had the Simby sprints. We had, the crab walks and the crawls, push-ups, and this. Every position went together, packed middies, and coaches are yelling at you if you slack off. And so I got to Syracuse. I tried to get those pink slips to get my courses in. There was elective courses that I needed to get, I couldn't get. They were filled, and it was that first couple weeks was not a fun time for me. I looked at Gary and Paul going, oh, guys, I don't know how am I going to do this. I can't even get my courses that I need. I said, it's cold as hell here. I hate it. We're not using our sticks. We're running. We're sprinting. My first couple of weeks, Fred, was not that exciting, to say the least. But then I adapted.
What did you choose for your major?
I chose poli-sci, political science. I didn't know what I wanted to do, to be honest with you. I have no clue. If I look back, probably it would have been business or finance. I just wanted a paper. I wanted a diploma. I liked it. I didn't love it. 1 out of 6 kids in my family that went to college. Only one. So I was just proud of that if I can finish and graduate, I think my parents would be pretty proud.
People don't know where we come from. That's why I like to always ask you all that come on the show your backgrounds, because just like you, I'm first generation college. I'm trying to figure it out. It's like, it wasn't like teammates who they could go home and say to your parents, what are you doing in this situation? I didn't know. My father didn't know what to tell me. He couldn't help me in that situation. It sounds like you were the same way. Yes.
No, I didn't know. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how, to balance school with lacrosse. I'm like, we practice every day at 3 o'clock, 3:30. Wow. How can I do that? How do I get my homework done? I had no idea. And thank goodness I had Paul and Gary there.
Were you all roommates at Syracuse?
This is how great of a friend Gary is. Gary was actually living in a frat house, and he moved into Skytop. Skytop's there right across from Manley Fieldhouse, where obviously we got changed and we practiced every day. And you had all your other teammates living in other apartments there with you. Gary was just nice enough to make my stay a lot nicer, because he moved out of his house, his fraternity house, and moved into Skytop. Obviously, to save some money too, because I think he had to pay some money at the house he stayed in. And him and I, and there's another guy by the name of Sean McGowan from Rochester, who went to Rush Henrietta. He was another roommate of us. So it was Gary, myself, and Sean. We lived together for two and a half years. 2.5 years, yeah. What a great time.
Now that you're out of school, tell me, what do you think would be not the required major, but the required class so that when someone graduated from college, they would have essential skills to thrive? What would be in your course, whether it be guest speakers or signed reading, movies? What would you do in your required class to graduate from Syracuse University?
I think public speaking would be a course that everybody should take in college. I didn't like public speaking at all. You know, I remember shying away from events that people asked me to speak at. And I just wish I took more of that in college. And I learned, obviously, years later that it's not so bad. Well, I think that's a huge asset for people to take.
And knowing what you do now, you are constantly public speaking.
Yeah, I'm constantly. And it's funny, I never liked it. And guess what? I still get nervous when I do speak in public. I remember when I got inducted into the Hall of Fame in '08, I'm like, I was nervous. And I remember writing the speech down going, am I going to really say this? Do I just look at it? Do I go word for word? Or I just kind of just look off it and go with my own? I thought there had to be 400 people at that induction. And it was great. You know, I think I got a few chuckles about Simmons calling me and, you know, going out to buy books and thinking Syracuse, New York was 5 minutes from the Big Apple. Yeah, you're right. I do a lot with camps and clinics, and I talk to a lot of people, and it's great.
So tell me, what have you done over the years to get better at the craft that's at the heart of your business as an entrepreneur?
I listen. I watch other people to see what they do to enhance their camps, their tournaments, their clinics. I put my own little flair in there.
As a college professor, gosh, almost 18 years, and then before that I was a public school teacher, there's not a class where, I mean, a regular class, I'm not talking about, I do a lot of lecture, a lot of talk. People can invite me to come out and speak. I'm just talking about my class that I have every Tuesday and Thursday. 5 minutes before the class starts, I'm nervous like a game. I'm nervous like a national championship. It is, right. But one of the things I've learned is I let nervous be normal, and when I haven't been nervous, I haven't prepared, and I've embarrassed myself. It is a quite normal feeling that I try to tell my students. They just don't know I'm nervous. It's all going on the inside, just like during a game. But once you get going during a game, you get hit once, or you know, and your teacher, you let out a couple things, it all goes away. But I understand exactly what you're saying. You don't quite feel comfortable with it, but it's what you do and you make it work. It sounds like. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm definitely some days you feel confident. There's days you're not. It's like me flying a plane. If I'm on a plane, a flight going somewhere for a trip, there's days where I am nervous getting on that plane. There's days where I'm thinking, oh, this sucker's going to go down. and I get the white knuckles and sweats, my palms sweating. And there's days I go on the plane and I'm smiling. It's like there's nothing happening. It's crazy. You know, it's crazy how your mind plays kind of tricks on you sometimes. You know.
So you mentioned that Coach was able to get together, and it sounds like very similar to me. You know, Coach got a little work study, got a little scholarship money, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and I was able to pay for it. How did you and your family pay for your Syracuse degree?
I did start working lacrosse camps in the summer when I came back. My mom and dad had some money saved, so basically they didn't send me a lot of money, that's for sure. You know, I had to live off very, very little allowance. They gave me an allowance for Syracuse, and I was lucky, Fred. I had a full ride. Everything was paid for. So I didn't have to pay for one thing. The only thing I had to pay for is some books. That's it. Even my meals were paid for and everything.
And I think it's important for people to hear this, whether it be parents or students that listen to the interview. That doesn't happen often, even at Syracuse.
Right. It doesn't. You don't get full rides anymore, hardly. And if you do, you're very special. You're a special student athlete to get a full ride. They break that down now in quarters and halves. And Gary, Paul, and I back in the day, we were very fortunate to get a full ride to Syracuse. And I look back being thankful. I've helped a lot of kids in high school get into colleges. And you just don't see full scholarships anymore.
The show will be right back. Women folk, Hall of Famers. I need to know who they are, local Hall of Fame or national. That would be a great interview for the show, preferably over the age of 40, because you have lived life and have some experience you can share. Please send that person's information. You can find all my information on my website, Fredopie.com. There's a food blog. For those who don't know, I work as a food historian, and there's a ton of really interesting content and recipes on there. You can see the link to my book page. You can see all 6 books that I've published. In my most recent one, Start With Your Gift, the real deal about life and get ready for life. It's there. If you are planning an event and you're looking for a guest speaker, let me know if you're interested in having me come to speak. Welcome back to this edition of the Fredopieshow Show. But when you first graduated, what was your first job, your first gig? Was it lacrosse full-time, or tell me the deal?
Yeah, it was. I was drafted by the Buffalo Bandits for the Major Indoor Lacrosse League during school, while I was finishing school. I opted out of that. I didn't want to play. I didn't have a car, and it was just too much of a hassle. I just wanted to not play any lacrosse after I finished that last season. So I waited out a year, and somebody gave me a tip that Philadelphia had a job open for a college coach, and that school was St. Joe's University in Philly. Remember Mike French, the general manager of the Philadelphia Wings?
Mike French, Canadian, one of the early Canadians to go down and play at Cornell. Fantastic player, Hall of Famer.
Talked to Gary and Paul again, because Gary and Paul just got they just got traded from Detroit Turbos to the Philadelphia Wings, and they helped me again. They're like, hey, Tommy's not going to play for the Buffalo Bandits. He was a first-round pick. Why don't we try to get him next year? So everything worked out perfectly. So in January, I moved to Philly and went to school. So I started my graduate courses for secondary education at St. Joe's University while I was coaching assistant coach there. And the Philadelphia Wings started that first season in January, and I played as a rookie in 1994 for the Philadelphia Wings. We had all the Philly guys. We had Chris Flynn, we had Scott Gabrielson, we had Gary Martin, we had Kevin Finneran, all those guys, Paul Danikin. We had a lot of guys that lived in Philly. Billy Miller, Brian Volker from Hopkins, Gary and Paul Gate. Chris Bates was great. Wow. Very competitive for his little size. He played like a big player, big man. He was great, very scrappy. We had Dallas Eliak, our goalie from Vancouver. He was like our nemesis, mine and Gary and Paul's. He was on Burnaby against us as kids, and probably the best box goalie to this day ever to play the game. Unbelievable.
Let me ask you about 3 people that I want folks to not forget, because I think their contribution to the game is real important. One is John Zalberti. He should be a Hall of Famer. But what made him a great player?
I only played 1 year with him, my freshman year, when we won that '89 championship. He was the best feeder. He had the best eyes. And the good thing about John, the reason he was so good and hard to cover is he can zip that ball lefty or righty. And you wouldn't even know what hand he really was, what dominant hand. He was so smooth. And I'm talking, when he zips it, he's throwing a pass 80 miles an hour. And if you don't catch it, he'll yell at you. He could score. He's one of the only Americans besides you, Fred Opie, that I've seen do a backhand and score in practice. He was a good finisher, but his feeding abilities, I'll cut open a couple feet, and that ball would zip in my stick. He would pass it in traffic, which you don't really see that often. He would pass that ball in traffic, and I would catch everything.
Too, that John probably could throw that pass as fast behind his back as in front as well.
Yes, yeah. And John and I would fool around at practice in the dome. We'd throw these little twister passes to each other and try to elude each other and laugh about it. He was a comedian, and he was a great teammate. He was a good leader. He was competitive as anybody. He had the fire. He had the fire in his belly, and he hated losing. When we came out of the tunnel as a team, we always came out, and it was Z and Steve Scarmazzino as our captains.
Scarbo.
And we came up, and it was perfect. You know, they came out, and he was great. You know, he was a good leader. He would never take losing. He wanted to win all the time, even more than most, but we still remain good friends. We play golf together. He lives in Atlanta.
Oh.
He's still doing some lacrosse. Yeah, he's still with youth lacrosse. He's coaching.
I've heard tremendous things. I have never seen the guy play, but I've heard tremendous things. John Grant Jr., what are the attributes that make him a great player?
The old John Grant Sr., I remember watching when I was a little boy, when I was 10. I see this tall, skinny, real tall, skinny guy come up, lefty, play against the Victoria Shamrocks in the Mann Cup 79, and I see this tall, lanky, skinny guy just scoring backhands from, like, center. It was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So I remembered seeing him, and I worked this camp back in 89. Kevin Alexander and I flew in the summer of 89 after my freshman year to work John Grant Sr.'s all-pro shooting skills camp. And that's where I see this other kid with this tremendous stick, and this little freckled-faced kid, and that was John Grant Jr. And I'm like, this kid's going to be great. You know, this kid already at the age of, I don't know what he was then, maybe 11, 12. He's already shooting, throwing backhands and scoring on the goalies at camp. And basically, I started playing against him in pros. He became big. He's this big-sized guy and strong. Demanded the ball. He wanted to score. He wanted to score. When he scored 3, he wanted 6. When he scored 6, he wanted 10. If he's listening, I'm sorry. The only thing about John Grant Jr. that there wasn't a shot he didn't like. That kid would try to carry the team a little too much on his back. I had the honor to finally play with him on Team Canada in 1998 when he was just getting out of Delaware. And he was good.
Yeah.
Definitely one of the best players, I think.
When you talked about his plethora of shots, for anybody of my age, remember the basketball player, World B. Free. I mean, the dude literally changed his name. I don't remember World B. Free's original name was, but he could shoot the rock. He'd shoot, 60 shots a game, but, he would score. So when you mention him, that's what we think of. You mentioned, and it's come up twice in interview, the name Kevin Alexander. Why has he been considered such an important contribution to the game of lacrosse?
So Dave Huntley and Kevy played together at the 1982 World Games here at Hopkins. I didn't know that until later. That Huntley became my assistant coach on the Bayhawks, the Baltimore Bayhawks. Huntley and I became really good friends. He named his kid after Kevin Alexander. So that's Kevin Huntley is from Kevin Alexander. He was my idol. I idolized Kevin Alexander as a kid, playing, growing up. His stick skills were the best. He'd be on breakaways after breakaways, shooting everything behind the back, reverse backhands. Amazing. He was a big-time player in key clutch situations. And that's what made Kevy. And another leader, like John Zilberti we mentioned. Yeah. He was a leader. Kevy was more competitive than anybody I've ever met. After getting to know him and playing with him years later, he never liked losing. It could be throwing darts or foosball. He did not like losing. And that's what made him such a competitor. The best stick I've ever, and people compare me a lot to him later on in life. I just learned. I learned from him. And I was in my front yard on the 4x4 goal saying, hey, Kevin Alexander. I was talking to myself that I'm Kevin Alexander.
Wow.
He's from Victoria, same hometown.
To end, some fun questions to learn about your values and things that more off the field. Tom, if you could have a superpower, which one would you want and why?
If I could have a superpower, a superpower, that's, I don't know, maybe something like a Superman where I can fly around and help people in life, help people lift their spirits up and help, save the world, I guess.
If you could have dinner with three people, dead or alive, what three people would you want to have dinner with, and why these three?
Jack Nicholson would be one. Robin Williams would be another. And Wayne Gretzky would be the third. Jack Nicholson, he seems like a fun guy. You see him on movies and different settings, and the way he portrays himself, he just seems like one of those guys that could just kick back with a cocktail with and just laugh all day with him, cracking jokes and smiling. And so Jack Nicholson for sure. Today's society and life, I think it's important to laugh. I like to be with people that would make me laugh. So I think Jack Nicholson. Robin Williams is another guy that I've always, liked as an actor. He would be the same way. Just, hanging out with him would be fun. It'd be a lot of funny moments. And obviously Wayne Gretzky, probably my biggest idol as a kid growing up in any sport. Things that Wayne Gretzky obviously preached. He obviously was a good leader on the old Edmonton Oilers when he started winning Stanley Cups. Just hearing stories about him growing up in Ontario, Canada, and his dad being very, a good family man and a good person. So Wayne Gretzky would be another person I would definitely like to hang out with.
And Edmonton, I'm assuming, is around Victoria, around that same area?
Basically, yeah. It's the next province over.
Okay.
So you have British Columbia on the way west. The next one to the east is Alberta, which is Edmonton, Calgary. Okay. Those are the big cities.
Good.
And the next one over, obviously, is Saskatchewan and Regina. And after that is Manitoba, Ontario, and Quebec. So that's how it goes. But yeah, Edmonton's a great town, and they actually, I think Wayne Gretzky still owns the big Edmonton Mall. So I loved hockey growing up.
How have your eating, drinking, and training habits changed?
Since Syracuse, well, I enjoy cooking a lot more. So I'm eating healthier. My wife and I, we enjoy cooking, three nights a week. So I eat a lot of salmon, chicken, vegetables. We grill out a lot. So I think my eating habits are better. I'm not eating Varsity's pizza and chicken wings all the time.
Varsity is where Coach took me on my recruiting trip. So that's why I laughed when you said that, yeah.
Drinking, yeah, I'm Canadian. I like my beer and the odd wine once in a while. So yeah, I still drink, but nothing like college. The cake parties and all that.
Okay.
That was crazy times. But so I'm kind of controlled more with with drinks.
And what about working out? How's that changed?
Working out is a little bit more difficult. I try to work out every day, but with life and family, some things that the time is tough. I find it a lot tougher to find those hour or two to work out. So not as much as I like. I would love to work out more, but I try to stay healthy.
Tell me, what is the kindest thing that someone's ever done for Tom Marechek?
After my 4 years at Syracuse, I get a phone call, and it was from Todd Curry's mother.
Wow.
And Todd Curry's mom said, "Tom, I have a little gift for you. Can I bring it to, the banquet?" So we had that banquet there. Remember Drublin's East, the golf course? We always had that banquet. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that's where you guys had it too back in the day. And she brings me this huge scrapbook that she started when I was a freshman and collect all the clippings of every article. I thought that was the nicest thing anybody ever has done for me, especially when her son graduated before I even got there.
Wow. Wow.
So I didn't even play with Todd, and his parents are collecting, making a scrapbook for me.
Wow.
I think that was the nicest thing to this day that anybody's ever done.
That's a great story. Wow. When is the last time that you cried and why?
It's funny you say that. A week ago, and I put this on a lot. Now my kids love it. Watching Miracle, the movie. The hockey movie Miracle, yeah. I don't know. I cry like a baby when I watch that. It brings back memories growing up in Canada.
Oh.
You know, as players, like we've mentioned, with the Pepper twins and the Gates, and we were a team and we were a family. And even Syracuse, you know, we were a family. And when you watch those scenes, it just, you know, it's heart wrenching. It just brings it brings a lot of stories back to your mind. And so that movie, it was just a week ago. I remember just crying, and my kids look at me laughing, like, "Dad, are you crying?" Miracle. Anybody out there, I suggest if you have not seen it, go rent it, because it's a tearjerker. If you have a history like I had back in the day playing sports with teammates, it's amazing. You know, getting together and off and on the field. So yeah, that was definitely the last time I cried.
What is something about running a lacrosse business that when you first started, you thought you understood, but you realized down the road, man, I had that all wrong?
You know, I thought, okay, I'm going to have camps. I'm going to make money. I can just shoot on the goalie and show off and do this and this. But it's not about that. You know, it's about that years later. I'm thinking, all right, you know what? I got to structure this better. I got to hire the best coaches possible. I thought I had to get college kids with big names to show up at my camp and coach, and thinking they're going to be great at it, you know, and that's not the case all the time. So what I do, my formula is I keep the same guys close to my age that still coach high school, they've coached college before, and I just keep these guys. And that's the formula that I use, and it works. So you got to keep it fresh, and that's what I try to do. I keep the camp fresh. I don't want the same camp every year after year after year, because you know, I know repetitions is huge, but I like changing things around and keeping some old things. Obviously, the fundamentals the same, but changing other drills around.
Tommy, it's very much like teaching. I mean, you can teach the same course. If I were to teach the same course the same way for the last 18 years, it would drive me insane. So I have some basic components to the course that I teach, but I am constantly tweaking it, coming up with different clips, different videos, different assigned readings, different ways of getting the pedagogy across. I 100% agree with you that doing the same thing, and sometimes people think as teachers, as professors, oh, you teach the same thing. No, because I want to stay sane. There's no way in the world I'm going to teach the exact same thing, you know, for the next 10 or 15 years. And I'm also coming up with new courses. The same way you may come up with a new clinic, I'm coming up with new courses based on the research and the writing I'm doing, because I find not only does it make me a better teacher, but I got fresh material. It's almost like a comedian. You got fresh material to share with your audience. You're not going to be doing the same jokes for 10 years and think people are going to keep coming to hear you speak.
You're absolutely right, and you know that, Fred. You try to mix it up because it's like my lacrosse game. You know, if I play lacrosse generically and just shoot everything overhand, did everything like that, I don't know how long I would have played lacrosse. Yeah. And that's where I became interested in learning how to do it behind the back or reverse backhand, and you know, and I tell people I don't know if I would have played lacrosse if I didn't have that flair. If I didn't want to be a creator, you know, and that's the same thing with playing sports to me.
Yeah, I also think it's one of the reasons why, if you look at the Final Four in lacrosse, there's some teams that attract larger crowds than others, and Syracuse certainly is one, because we had the freedom to do what you're saying, and the fans knew if it comes to the Syracuse game, you might see something that is historical. So come to the game, versus other teams may win, may beat us, but it may not be as entertaining to watch. So there's advantages and disadvantages. I think also this kid at Cornell is a prime example that people don't know what he's going to do. So they're showing up to see what's he going to do, what's John going to do today, type of thing. What do you agree with that, or what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's very important, and absolutely, I think that it's everything that people would want.
Last question. I didn't tell you about this one, but you've heard some interviews, so you may know it's coming. I want you to write a book of success, and my definition is having the most positive impact on the world around you. And you could be 7, 8, 10 chapters in that book. I just want to know the title of 3 of the chapters in your book of success. What would you title the 3 chapters after all the lacrosse that you have traveled and all the life that you have lived?
I think one chapter would be ambition. I think ambition, if you want, ambition being as good as you can be in anything, business, sports, teaching, coaching, playing. Ambition would definitely be one. That's what I had as a kid playing sports, soccer and lacrosse. Another title chapter, I would say, being a good teammate or teammates, and that is being a good person, a good teammate, helping a team. Don't be an individual. Don't be selfish. Just be that guy that everybody needs, and just be a good teammate to make your team better. When I grew up playing lacrosse, the thing I cherish the most is making everybody else better around me. I'm not worrying about just me scoring goals or assists. I want the next guy to score the goal. I want everybody else better. So I think that's another one. The third, just being a good person. Be a person that everybody can look up to without bragging or boasting, and just being that guy that everybody wants to be around. I like being around people, and that's a huge thing for me, is just being that kind of person.
Tom Marechek, folks, that is his lacrosse journey. Probably much more to share. But, Tom, I appreciate you being extremely generous with your time today. I learned a lot. I mean, there are so many stories, and I think it's probably why you've had the success you've had as a teacher, as a coach, and as a parent, is you're a great storyteller. I think that's the mark of a great teacher, is to be able to tell stories. Thank you for sharing the number of stories that you did. The one you shared about Gary and why he wears 22 is getting me a little choked up. That's an amazing story that I hope, if you just joined us late, that you go back and listen to what Tom said about number 22 and the significance of it for the Gates and for the community of Vancouver, British Columbia. Man, some really cool stuff. Thank you, man. And I will make sure that you get a link to the shorter version of it, so you will have it as a documented history for your family and your network.
Fred, thank you very much, bud. I hope to see you soon. I know I owe Gary a trip up there to Syracuse, so maybe I'll see you in the next Syracuse alum outing. But no, it was a really nice pleasure to talk to you. Not really getting to know you that much. It's nice to finally sit down and have a conversation.
That's a wrap for this show. Thanks for listening. To hear more content like it, go to Fredopi.com. If you have questions about advertising and sponsoring this show, contact us at fdopie@gmail.com. That's fdopie@gmail.com. Hey listeners, we want to make you aware of the Jim Brown 56 Lacrosse Challenge. Donate $56 or more to the Uganda Lacrosse Foundation at ugandalacrosse.org. 56 was Brown's Syracuse lacrosse jersey number. Purchase a copy of my lacrosse memoir/career advice book, Start With Your Gift. Post a picture of you holding your copy of the book on Instagram and tag me, and I will donate 10% of the proceeds of your purchase to the Uganda Lacrosse Foundation. It will advance the initiative of getting lacrosse into the Olympics. For that to happen, lacrosse has to exist on all the continents on the globe, and Africa is the last frontier. Your tax-free donation will go a long ways in helping spread lacrosse from not just being the fastest game in the United States, but the fastest growing game across the world.